This episode is brought to you by DistroKid. Hey, have you heard? I'm coming back to give guided tours at the Punk Rock Museum in Las Vegas, Friday, May 2nd, Saturday, May 3rd, and Sunday, May 4th. 2 tours each day, one at 12:30 p.m. and one at 4 p.m. Get your tickets now at thepunkrockmuseum.com. The Punk Rock Museum, where you can expect the unexpected. Like the time I saw Fletcher from Pennywise and Noodles from The Offspring randomly hanging out on a Tuesday afternoon. Or Flea from Red Hot Chili Peppers having a casual stroll through. Or the time myself and a group walked around the corner to find Fat Mike grilling a married couple about their, never mind. Join me Cinco de Mayo weekend, May 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, as I guide you through 5 decades of punk rock memorabilia, flyers, musical instruments, stage gear, outfits, literature, and so much more. Tickets available now at thepunkrockmuseum.com. Hey everybody, today's guest is Martin Fry, lead vocalist for the Sheffield, England new wave pop band, ABC. Together we rip back the covers and dive deep into the writing, recording, and inspiration behind the 1982 smash hit single, The Look of Love, taken from ABC's debut album, The Lexicon of Love. The phrase ahead of its time gets thrown around a lot, but in this instance it's 100% true. The band, along with producer Trevor Horn, created an undeniable masterpiece with this song. The production melded analog instruments with the latest digital technology available in the early 80s. The mix is flawless, and elements of this track can be heard on other projects that Trevor Horn worked on afterwards, namely Art of Noise and Yes. This was one of the hardest songs for me to dissect. There's so much going on at all times. And that, mixed with all the production nuances, many big and many minute, made The Look of Love a nice challenge for me. Martin also mentioned that none other than Ziggy Stardust himself, David Bowie, was a fly on the wall in the studio during the recording of this track. But you're gonna have to listen to find out. Hey, have you heard? Chris DeMakes a podcast. 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 Martin, how are you?
Very well indeed. Hello, Chris. Pleasure to see you.
Pleasure to see you. You know, for the listeners out there, Martin is kind enough. He's out on the road right now. ABC's out with Howard Jones. And you have a day off in Morgantown, West Virginia. You're sitting in a hotel room talking to me. Thank you so much. That really means a lot.
No, it's a pleasure. Yeah, we're on our way to Washington. And you're going to ask me where we played last night. And Brown County, Indiana. Yeah, played there last night.
Ah, how was it?
Great. Very good.
Yeah?
So we're about kind of a couple of shows in, about midway through the tour with Howard Jones. Yeah, ABC. We got Richard Blade opening up for us. So yeah, things are good. That
is so cool. We've talked to Howard here on the show, and he's a fantastic chap. Such a nice guy.
It's his birthday tomorrow, so I don't know. They've gone to get him a present. It's going to be a road present. It's not going to be anything spectacular. It's going to be a bunk buddy or a box of sweets, candy.
Hey. It's the thought that counts. But before we jump into anything here, I just want to congratulate you on your career. You've been at this for, well over 40 years now. This song came out 43 years ago in 1982. And I just got to say, I went back and checked out the video, which I saw on MTV as a kid. It oddly looks very modern. The outfits, the stage design that you had, it doesn't look like it's 43 years old. I could see some young kids in a new wave band adopting that look right now, and it would look like your video. I think that's really cool.
I've made many crimes against fashion. I've done it professionally for 43 years. A lot of them are encapsulated there in those great ABC videos. And as you know, we came through in the early days of MTV. Yeah, they were laying the cable out for MTV.
And they were.
Fortunately, all these narcissistic, bonkers bands from Britain came through, like the Eurythmics, Depeche Mode, The Cure, I don't know, New Order, Human League, Dexys, ABC, so Soft Cell, Police, Pretenders, cast of thousands. So each video had to be different, yeah. And ours, I don't know, I think by the time we'd reached, say, The Look of Love, we were trying to make a video like Mary Poppins meets Benny Hill. Yeah, there were so many great, highly pretentious videos. I said to the director, and that's why I end up immortalized forever in a candy striped blazer and a straw bow tie. Yeah, with a parrot and kids. And years later, I thought to myself, would Kurt Cobain have worn a straw bow tie and worked with children and animals? Probably yes. In his later phase, had he been around, yeah, he would have probably. He, like me, he would have entered his Dick Van Dyke phase. Yeah,
there you go.
I spend hours thinking about things like that. An alternative universe, yeah, of music.
Yeah, well, the video, it's funny. I was watching it, and like I said, it oddly doesn't look dated, and everything is cyclical, as you know. Fashion comes back. I'm seeing kids with mullets now. I'm like, what are you doing? You know?
Yeah, yeah. I stopped my car to look at a guy's mullet. I pointed it out to my wife. It's a classic mullet.
Yeah, what is it, 1989 again? Jeez.
Yeah, I mean, in that video, though, Trevor Horn shows up and Paul Morley, a writer who championed us, shows up. So we had to fill the canvas. Yeah, there were canvases to fill those videos, yeah. And fortunately for us, comedy is pretty classic. You know, comedy changes through the years, as we know. But if you go to the classics, kids, your stuff will stand the test of time. Yeah, I think.
Absolutely. Well, your first single, Tears Are Not Enough, made the UK top 20 in 1981. And then in 1982, you released your debut studio album, The Lexicon of Love, which reached #1 on the UK albums charts. The Look of Love, of course, is from this album. It was the third single released from the album. The single was released May 7th, 1982, which preceded the album coming out 6 weeks later on the 21st of June. What was that like? You're a young man, and you come out. I'm not saying you didn't pay your dues or put the hard work in, but you guys kind of exploded, you know, into the atmosphere. It was just it had to be thrilling.
Yeah, it was thrilling to come out with your first records and for it to be a hit record, on a national scale in Britain. That was something special. But obviously, it throws your life into confusion, because one minute I'm signing on the dole, which is employment stamps,
yeah,
on a Wednesday afternoon in Sheffield, and then Thursday I'm on Top of the Pops, which was the national TV show, performing "Tears Not Enough," our first single. And then you get back to Sheffield, and now ABC formed in Sheffield, and everywhere I went in Sheffield, somebody was in a band. It was great. It was kind of like, you know, I'd walk into the pub and there'd be like Def Leppard on that side of the bar, drinking pints of beer. The Human League would be drinking their cocktails on that kind of side of the bar. You know, Jarvis Cocker would be collecting the pint pots. And then I could go out and I could watch Cabaret Voltaire or Graph or Clock DVA or Artery or the Stunt Kites, you know, any number of brilliant bands. I could see them on, you know, any night of the week. So when I got back to Sheffield, yeah, of course, when I sat in the pub, everybody looks over and goes, yeah, this much talent. Do you know what I mean? Because you've kind of broken out of the indie scene.
Yeah.
And suddenly you've had a hit record. You're having a hit record, yeah. But I have to say the Sheffield grassroots music scene was phenomenal, and it was great inspiration. It made you kind of really, you know, hone your songs, hone your performances when you're starting out. And obviously you get a record deal, well, and then after that, having a hit record, it takes you to a sort of slightly higher plateau, I suppose. But yeah, it's a funny thing, success. Yeah, it's like somebody else is driving the car for you and you're going 120 miles an hour. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's just, it's incredible. I've had a number of guests on here that their first record.
Honestly, that's how it is. Yeah.
Yeah, just exploded.
Because most people just shrug and go, yeah, it was nothing. You know, I knew I was destined. I was destined to succeed with my incredible songwriting skills. But no, the reality is very different. Yeah, it's great. Well, suddenly everybody knows who you are. It feels that way. Of course, not everybody does know who you are, but inside your head, you think everybody knows who you are, which is kind of like walking into a hall of mirrors. Yeah, I always think, yeah. So that takes a little while to deal with. But by the time we released Look of Love, we were getting pretty good at it. Yeah, we'd had 3 hit records. So then we had to put out an album, yeah, which was our first album.
That's so cool. You mentioned producer Trevor Horn, and we're going to get into the song here in a minute, but he gained fame in 1979 as a member of the Buggles. This guy couldn't sit still. The Buggles, of course, did Video Killed the Radio Star. He then was a part of Yes.
Yeah.
I did not know, I love Yes. I did not know that he sang on the Drama record. I went back and listened to that album. My gosh, does he sound like John Anderson, who he had replaced. Then he goes and makes the electronic noise pop band Art of Noise.
Yeah, that was after us. The Art of Noise, actually. Yeah. But Trevor, yeah, when I met Trevor, he'd just come back and he played Madison Square Gardens with Jeff Downes as part of, a version of Yes. So, yeah, it's funny, though, because he'd started producing records, single records, really, for bands. There was a guy called Philip Japp, and then there was Dollar. He created this sort of, he'd write and record and produce songs, and we heard his song called Handheld in Black and White by Dollar on the radio, and it just sounded like it was from the near future. It was like a panoramic sound. It just kind of came out at you. We thought, well, what's this? We were looking for somebody to produce us after we'd made our first record, Tears Not Enough, but we were looking for somebody to produce us because there were a lot of arguments in the studio when we made our first single. It was kind of like the band mixing the record. So we'd heard Handheld in Black and White by Dollar and arranged to meet Trevor at the bottom of Queensway in London. And when we met him in the pizza parlor there, we realized I'd never realized till now really how successful he had been, because obviously with Yes, with Buggles, clearly. But he was just beginning his path to becoming a jobbing record producer. So, and he had a great sense. He has a great sense of humor, and I could tell he kind of valued our bullshit. Basically, we walk in and we tell him we're the future of rock and roll. He doesn't quite believe it, but he thinks, yeah, there's a bit of swagger here. This could be useful if I came to make a record with these guys. So, as a result of that meeting, I think he decided to kind of go into the studio with us, and he produced Poison Arrow, and then we carried on working together. Yeah.
Well, I know he's brilliant because he goes and replaces John Anderson in Yes. 3 years later, John Anderson comes back to Yes, and they asked Trevor to produce 90125, which ends up becoming their biggest record of all time. Owner of a Lonely Heart, and some of those songs are on that record.
And Owner of a Lonely Heart's just got that sonic quality, hasn't it? Where they cut up the guitar parts. It's in my top 10 of tunes, I think. It's just something in there that's magical in the way they approach that record. Yeah. But that happened after us. Art of Noise formed with Ann Dudley, who was a string arranger in the studios on The Lexicon of Love, Gary Langan, Trevor, and JJ. JJ Gizeltic was Trevor's Fairlight guy. He'd sample things. So the Art of Noise and Moments in Love came through just after we'd finished our record. Yeah.
Okay, and I guess Gary Langan was also the engineer, and he did the programming on the Fairlight as well.
Yeah, well, the Fairlight 1, Trevor had mortgaged his house and bought a Fairlight 1 in the early 80s, and he would use that. Yeah, Trevor would program. We broke everything down. Originally, I'd been in a band called Vice Versa, which was kind of along the lines of Soft Cell, Depeche Mode. We were out on the same circuit. Mark White and Steve Singleton invited me into their band, and they had a couple of synthesizers, Korg Mini preset, rhythm generator, and we'd work out ways of making it sound like a Kraftwerk, on a 2-track machine.
Yeah.
So when it came to record Poison Arrow, we put in the kick and the snare into Trevor's Fairlight, and then it was kind of constructed I remember Trevor saying, like building a house. And if you build a house, you don't do the roof first. You do the foundations. Then you do the So we did it kind of step by step, very quickly. David Palmer is an incredible drummer. He did a lot of the drum programming on that. Yeah, he plays with Rod Stewart now today, all these years on. He's played with many people. But Dave was kind of a kid from Chesterfield, which is a suburb of Sheffield back then. And we all came through those sessions, yeah. And there were great sessions on the Lexicon of Love and recording Look of Love. Very positive. A lot of things happened every 20 minutes, which is important when you're making a record. It's when you're sitting around dismantling what you've just done, that leads to kind of a long time in a studio and frustration. But it was a very creative time, yeah. I don't know if that answers your question, Chris.
No, it very well does. And you can't, sometimes what you just said, you can't overthink it in the studio. Once you start overcooking the idea, that's when you run into trouble.
Well, you know what it is? It's the band dynamic. So you've got a band with 5 members. Your thumb and your finger does something really good, but the other 3 fingers go, nah, turn it down. You know, they kind of chip in.
Yeah.
So that you quickly learn how to operate within a band dynamic, you know. Yeah.
Well, I want to jump into this song. There's a lot to comb through here. I want to just start out by saying that this song's a classic. I am honored to talk to you. I listened to this song as a young kid. I was a 9-year-old kid when this song came out. I was glued to MTV. I heard the British accents. It was such a mystery. I never thought I'd ever get to your beautiful country, let alone be able to talk to artists from that area. There was a true mystery before all our smart gadgets we have now, and the way everything's globalized. But this is a real pleasure for me. The song's 3 minutes and 26 seconds. The intro is some big open piano chords that strike off right off the top with a drum machine. Overdubbed drum tom hits. We get synth strings, as well as horns panned left and horns panned off to the right. There's synth bass present here as well in the intro. And there's some whoa, oh, before your lead vocal comes in with some whoa, ohs. Is that you falsetto there at the top, or is that No, not that. Before that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's me. That's my signature. I get to do that 43 years later, you see. So you say it's 3 minutes 26. 3 minutes 30 was the maximum length of any track then for the radio. So we're making a pop opera here. You know, that was very important. The other thing, ABC came out of post-punk era, like I say, in Sheffield, very experimental post-punk world. But we didn't want to sound post-punk. We wanted to sound like our generation, like the bands in Duran Duran and Depeche Mode and The Cure, much more polished. We were trying to make something that would sound very polished and very emotional. So we were using show business techniques, like actually having an intro. Do you know what I mean? We were going back to the dawn of the Beatles, where you had major chords pull in to say, right, draw the heartstrings in, semaphore the beginning of the song. The DJ can start speaking later. But those were very traditional methods. And if we are to kind of pull apart the Look of Love in the next few moments, that's what happened. Yeah. So we were trying to milk the drama in the opening intro. And some of the best tunes are where you can tell exactly where you are when you hear the intro. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Some records don't have that. They move in a different way. But that's definitely what we were chasing in the Look of Love. Yeah, drama. We also had a Selena machine we'd used successfully on Poison Arrow, which was a very early I think it's monophonic. We just used to overdub it, electronic. But then we had the budget for real strings. So on the record, it's the contrast between electronic and acoustic instruments,
analog. Yeah.
And it was the same with the bass. We loved Moog bass. We used to build bass signals up to sequence and play live across tracks. But also on the Look of Love, there's the slap bass that kind of comes in. And we wanted everything on the record to sound like it was kind of an avalanche. You know what I mean? It was kind of things would come crashing into the sound, and for there to be pretty much that really to milk the drama. So you hear that on the recording today. Yeah, the contrast between the acoustic stuff and the electronic material on the track.
No, that's what makes this song, and it's so ahead of its time for that. You talked about drama. This song is dripping with personality. I can't wait till later in the song we get to the part where you do the spoken word. It's kind of pompous, but it's tongue in cheek. It's very British. It's all these different adjectives. It is so cool. But back up to the top, coming out of the intro, and we get into verse 1. Right after you say that big whoa oh oh, we get some acoustic drums. Those are overdubs there, right? Those tom fills.
Yeah, David Palmer, very skilled drummer. People often thought, well, there was, but he was a drummer that didn't have an ego. Some drummers would, back then in the late 70s into the early 80s, they would never consider taking a Lindrum and reprogramming it, or a DMX, opening up the back and putting your own sounds in, slowing it down. We used to do all that kind of thing.
Yeah, he was a team player.
But David was fascinated by that. I remember he loved Kraftwerk. And he loved Steve Gadd, he loved Yellow Magic Orchestra too. So he was very interested in how you could manipulate sound, the two worlds. And Trevor jumped on this and set him free. So, as I say, some guys wouldn't give you their kick drum to put in a Fairlight. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, right.
But we were very, very, and the hats are all played. Yeah, he's a wonderful hi-hat player. I'm trying to think. That's featured on The Look of Love. But the toms, they'd be overdubs. Yeah.
Okay.
And that wasn't really because we didn't want to play it live, but it was more to kind of put the focus and shed the light onto different parts of the sound.
It accents everything.
That's very much Trevor Horn's production style. If you look at everything from, ABC, Art of Noise, Seal, some Pet Shop Boys stuff, and countless other records, he tends to, if somebody's going to play a drum fill, it slaps you in the face. It was kind of like that.
No, his production is insane. We're going to get into that in a moment. The dynamics in this song, you got this intro. You couldn't have explained it better a moment ago. You want to make a statement. That's what you had 3 minutes and 30 seconds to do it.
Plus, actually, later in the song, there's a lyric in there that goes, "Me, I go from one extreme to another." So even in the, from the lyric to the sound of the record to the structure of the record, it was all about the dynamic and switching and, and contrasts and stuff. I think that was a theme in The Look of Love. Yeah, in many different ways, not just the sound of it, not just the lyric.
When your world is full of strange arrangements and gravity won't pull you through, you're missing out on something. Well, that something depends on you.
When your world is full of strange arrangements and gravity won't pull you through, you're missing out on something. Well, that something depends on you.
Well, most love songs are really, really cheesy when it's Moon in June and they say, oh, isn't it wonderful being in love? Our songs, we want it to be very emotional, but they're basically about when things go wrong, when things confuse, when somebody doesn't love you, you know what I mean? And how that feels when you're in your late teens. So that kind of intensity. And I always liked this kind of intensity you get in a David Lynch film or earlier on, a Powell and Pressburger film, where in Hollywood in the sort of 50s as well, if somebody was emotional, they were hyper emotional, If they were angry, they start fighting each other. You know what I mean? That's kind of what you do in a movie to tell the story. And that's very much that hyper sort of intensity is there. That's what we were trying to conjure up. When your world is full of strange arrangements, Dylan-esque, it's kind of, and to take that and then to go into a totally different direction about a personal love song was what happened on that first part of the verse. Yeah. The curtain's open and here's a man down on the canvas, dusting himself off, ready to stand up again and face the world.
Yeah, I love that line though. Just the world is full of strange arrangements. That you're starting a song off with that. It's like, okay, where could this thing go? It's a very not so much an odd lyric. It's just it's different. It stands out. Verse 1, we got the drums, a killer synth bass groove, a hand clap effect on every snare hit. There is also a counter melody with what sounds like tubular bells. It's super loud in the mix, but like the bass, works perfectly with the lead vocal. Trevor Horn, the producer, really liked this sound. You can hear it on the intro of the song called Changes on the Yes album, 90125.
Yeah, it's like a marimba sound.
Yes.
We wanted to draw in like a marimba, so it's like Tito Puente or something in there. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, it's not a rock and roll record. It is a rock and roll record. It's ABC, but it's not a rock and roll record. That's kind of the gist of some of the sound choices we were chasing. Yeah. And we were never, we wanted to see if we could pull things off. So if we were going to have a clarinet, we were going to have a clarinet, we wanted to draw from beyond bass, drums and guitar for the palette, for the spectrum and the color spectrum of the record. Dun, dun, dun. The chords you're hearing probably are an amalgamation of maybe a Fender Rhodes, maybe a marimba sound from the Fairlight, perhaps. I can't quite recall. It's a long time ago.
Yeah.
And then a piano sound. So when something, it was never back then, all those years ago, it was pioneering. So you had to kind of create your own sounds. You couldn't go to a kind of a library and just grab stuff, or
right,
like you can now. So it was very much a case of trying to tailor bespoke sounds. So that sound you hear, the marimba, you hear it on the Art of Noise as well, is like probably the grand piano in Psalm East tracking a marimba sound. Yeah, I can't, and there's maybe a bit of Selena in there or something.
Well, the marimba on this track preceded the Yes record by about a year and a half. Okay. And I even went back, another Trevor Rabin came in as a guitarist on the 90125 record. I went to his original demo of Changes, and the tubular bells aren't there, which tells me that was Trevor Horn's idea.
Could be. Yeah.
most likely.
I can see a lot of what you do is archaeology. I like it.
I do. I'm
digging deep.
I'm taking the brushes and wiping the sand away from the rock here. But, I will say, and I told my producer this morning, Martin, I said we've done like 250 of these episodes. I pride myself on really digging. Like you said, I'm like a poor man's archaeologist here. But this song took me longer than usual to comb through because of the analog digital components. It's hard to tell what I'm calling real and what's man-made and what's been created.
Well, we did record. What I'm saying is we recorded a lot. We create the samples.
Sure.
In the mid 80s, you could kind of sample stuff, but then you couldn't really. The Fairlight one was very limited. Step programming. The Fairlight had its own code. It wasn't SMPTE. It was kind of Fairlight code you'd have to bed the track with, and then to make it sequence. So a lot of what we do is played. It just sounds more like it's sequenced, but it isn't. It's played. Yeah.
And for the listeners, the Fairlight, the first one, Fairlight CMI, came out in 1979. Those things were like $40,000 or $50,000 back then.
There was the Synclavier as well, obviously, which was double, triple that, I think. The Fairlight 2 is different, I think. Fairlight 3. So as they advanced, Psycho Acoustics, I think, Psycho Sounds used to sell them. It kind of got more and more sophisticated, and then obviously emulators synth came in, sampling and the Roland samplers and everything else. But this was the early days, so we were out there with our pioneering wagons traveling across America. Yeah.
You certainly will. Well, pre-chorus 1, I gotta know, what is this? I'm calling it the loud video game synth sound.
I'm trying to think. Oh, it may be a run on a bass on the Moog. Yeah.
Is that what that is?
Yeah.
That sound. Okay, besides, and we're going to get to the goodbye later, which may or may not be your ex-girlfriend. I don't know. We'll talk about that later. I've
read a myth.
Yeah. That's a myth. Okay. But aside from that, the thing that is most interesting to me about this mix is how Trevor was able to get sounds in here that are 4 or 5 dBs louder than your lead vocal, but you can still hear your lead vocal. It's brilliant. The placement's brilliant.
Yeah, in a way, it was a lot about because the traditional way is kind of record the band, the drummer wants it louder, the bass player wants it louder, and then you stick the vocal on top. It was kind of like a sort of jigsaw puzzle in a way, so that the vocal, even within the vocal, I was conscious when I was doing the lead. In the second half of the verse, it goes, all I'm saying, reply, it takes a lot to love you, all I'm doing. Another voice, it's true. All I mean now, there's one, and it's almost that dates back to the Temptations and the kind of way you'd get a lot of voices onto a track and you could hear them. They're working, not everybody's singing at the same time. It's working off each other, like the way Sly Stone did it in the early days of the Sly Stone.
Okay.
You can hear each character, each voice, but also within that, you're right. we'd leave space. A lot of the technique was, as I remember it, Gary Langan is an incredible engineer, recording engineer and producer. But we would record, and then we would make the decisions. We'd say, right, this is sounding great. Then Gary would have to bounce it all onto one track. And then we would continue to make space on a 24-track reel.
Yes.
So you have to make your decisions about where the bass parts are, where the slaps are, where the hats are, perhaps the kick, and the marimbas. And then you'd be very confident with that, because we would say, this is sounding great. This is how we want it to sound on the record. It would get bounced into, I don't know, tracks 6, 7, 8, and then we'd erase it and start recording again so that we could get more things onto the track. But it means you have to make your decisions as you go along. People don't really do that now with digital recording.
No.
You can have 500 versions on the track, but that rigorous decision making meant that there was space, especially space with the vocal, for the guitars, for other instruments to sit on the rhythm track. Basically, it's a simple idea, but it worked really well for us. And in a way, it makes Look of Love sound like a contemporary record, because I don't know, it's not a record by Taylor Swift or Harry Styles, but it has a sort of sonic quality about it. It was made 43 years ago, as you say, a long time ago.
Yeah. So you had just said a moment ago that you're still calling this the verse. When it changes here and we get that video game sound, I'm saying you said that was maybe the bass moog there. I'm calling this the pre-chorus part, the Temptations.
Okay, pre-chorus bridge.
Yeah. So this is the pre-chorus.
It takes a lot to love you. You know it's true. There's one thing that turns this gray sky to blue.
All I'm saying, it takes a lot to love you. All I'm doing, you know it's true. All I mean now, there's one thing, yes, one thing, that turns this gray sky to blue. Some really cool stuff in here. The all that I'm saying, it's like a soft unison. Those vocals are panned left and right. The all I'm doing has a little bit more pizzazz on it, but it's panned over left and right. The all I mean now, same thing here, but there's a high falsetto unison voice that's super loud, panned off left only on that one line. I love that. Do you recall that happening? And okay.
Yeah, it was like call and response. I know. I loved that in the Temptations, Sly Stone, James Brown, where, there's a lead vocal and then there's three. Gladys Knight and the Pips is probably the best example, where people have BVs that are as good as the lead. Do you know what I mean? They don't just sit in the shadows. They're kind of telling the story too.
Sure.
And that Prince did it on 1999, didn't he? It's kind of like a great device. So I did nick that idea for the bridges, and then to develop it so that when you hit the first one, so that you're moving through the track, it draws the listener in to the point where you can hit the chorus.
Oh, I love it. Well, after the line, there's one thing, yes, one thing, we get that video game sound again. That's what I'm going to call it. It's super loud, followed by a little guitar lick. And then we also get this little palm mute guitar lick right around the line that says, that turns this gray sky to blue. And then at the 48-second mark of the track, we're into the chorus. Chorus 1.
That's the look. That's the look. The look of love. That's the look. That's the look. The look of love. That's the look. That's the look. The look of love. When your girl has
That's the look. That's the look. The look of love. That's the look. That's the look. The look of love. That's the look. That's the look. The look of love. Where did that hook come from? That phrase?
I'd have never written that down on a piece of paper, because I love lyrics. I spend a lot of time writing lyrics, poetic lyrics. So I was round at my brother's place on a Saturday morning, and the chorus popped into my head. And for some reason, it just felt bulletproof. That's the look. That's the look. Again, it's call and response, or that's the look. That's the look. The look of love. Also, it's very cheesy. It's very, by that I mean very cheerful, major chords, kind of happy. that was never on any of the indie experimental tunes you'd hear in Sheffield. You know, we were definitely reaching out to Vegas and see if we could pull it into our experimental song, you know, and that whole worldview of turning the grey sky to blue. I mean, it was like almost taking a cliche and trying to breathe some new life into it. Do you know what I mean? Like, all these years on, I realized that a lot of people have had a broken heart, and it's a universal theme, and people love hope in a song, you know. And but the idea of turning a grey sky to blue with just a look, that's a pretty corny idea. So my job as the singer was to kind of make it work, you know, evocatively. Do you know what I mean? And maybe when Mick Jagger looked at the line, "I can't get no satisfaction," maybe he thought the same thing. He thought, well, that's fairly straightforward. I'm gonna have to make this work, you know.
Yeah.
That's very much part of the construction of a hit record. You know, you have to make every element sit together and work so that, you know, it seems like it's just kind of effortless. Yeah. So I wasn't really in the mood to kind of overcomplicate that chorus with some kind of literary reference or some difficult stuff. It was just bang, keep it simple.
I don't know if you could, because this is a dance track, and I'm going to talk right now about what is going on around, not underneath your vocal. That's usually what you say. What's going on underneath? I'm saying what's around because of Trevor's mix. There's so much here. Sampled drums, synth bass, a loud synth. When I mean loud synth string arrangement, a disco-esque guitar strumming off the ding, like the staccato guitar. Horns panned off right, tucked neatly in the mix. That's the look vocal. That vocal again is panned off left and right. And the last line, the look of love. On love, we get double vocals to accent that one word. Then the strings build to a nice crescendo, panned off left, and horn stabs panned off right. Together, those hook in with the rhythmic percussive hits of the band, followed by a huge tom hit that takes us into verse number 2. Again, those strings in this chorus, they're really loud to where the vocal sits, but they don't get in the way of it. I kept rewinding this. I've heard this song a bunch over the course of my life, but when I get it here and I'm looking at it like this, it was just like, how did they mix this so loud, but you can still get the essence and the feeling of the vocal? It's remarkable.
Even now, I go on tour with a full orchestra, and I play The Look of Love with the Lexicon Orchestra, which is a 35-piece orchestra, with Anne Dudley conducting, who did the string arrangements on The Look of Love, and with the band. Even now I realize if you take a band and an orchestra, sometimes you can just swamp it with orchestration, and you can't hear the band, you can't hear the vocals. But to play Look of Love in that format with full orchestra kind of works because of the chordal structure, because also the chords always work to a conclusion, which is the dead stop at the end of the chorus. Do you know what I mean? It's a climax. It builds and it builds and it builds. But the reason I can do it today in 2025 with a full orchestra is because it's there on the original version. You know what I mean? It's like you say, the strings don't swamp it. There was that kind of feeling that if you finally get to put strings on your track, you'd go crazy and just kind of have them everywhere, you know, like, because you're paying for them. Well, it's kind of nice to have that brevity and the economy there to sell the story of the song, basically. And the production itself.
Strings can be so dynamic and perfect if they're used, like you said, constructively, but you start throwing them everywhere, it'll lose that punch. Verse 2.
When your girl has left you out on the pavement, then your dreams fall apart at the seams. Your reason for living's your reason for leaving. Don't ask me what it means.
When your girl has left you out on the pavement, goodbye. Then your dreams fall apart at the seams. Your reason for living's your reason for leaving. Don't ask me what it means. The goodbye here, it's super loud. We get a voice left and a voice right. I mean, obnoxiously loud. What's up there? And whose voice was that?
I think it was the receptionist, Karen Clayton, on the in the session. Yeah, we didn't have a cast of thousands in Sami Studios. You know, it's a small studio with Gary Langan, with Trevor, with sometimes JJ, and Dudley would be there. Mark White, Steve Singleton, Dave Palmer, and myself. So it wasn't like a cast of thousands. It was a tight-knit group. So if we needed a female voice, I'd go and ask the receptionist in those studios to come
I
in.
love it.
Goodbye. But to this day, whenever I perform the song, there's always like about, it depends how many people we play to. There can sometimes be 10,000 voices going, goodbye. People love that hook, which is great for me. So I don't even sing it anymore. I don't sing it if I'm just doing a version of it, you know.
Do you know what that reminds me of? It reminds me that when the record was getting mixed, that when the part came on, that's just where the faders were at. When you were listening earlier, and it was like, oh my gosh, that's really loud, but oh my gosh, it sounds great. Leave them where they're at.
When we were mixing, everything was submixes, as like I say, because we'd committed to the family of the bass, drums, snare, maybe the maybe the kick, snare, and hats, and then there's a bass family, you know, so you're locking it all together. So it was really pleasurable to play, as opposed to that thing you get when you mix 60 tracks and you're kind of sweating and you have no idea where anything is. You could run the faders. Now, I do remember Trevor saying, I don't know if it was Gary or Trevor said, ideally, if faders would all be at 0, you know what I mean? Or a Chinograph mark. And he said that when he came back, years later, he said to me, you came back to it to put it back through the desk, SSL desk at Psalm West, I suppose. He said, yeah, it was great because you put it at 0 and it did sound good. You know, there wasn't bits, you know, it was all there.
Yeah.
And then you tweak the balance a little bit.
Tonight, when smoky sings, I hear violins.
Hey, everybody, we got a lot more coming up with Martin Fry after a few words from our sponsors.
Looking to elevate your music career? DistroKid is a digital music distribution service that enables musicians to distribute their music to online stores and streaming platforms such as Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube Music, Amazon, Tidal, and many more. DistroKid collects earnings and payments, sending them to you, the artist. With DistroKid, artists unlock a world of possibilities. From easily paying collaborators with splits to securing your music with DistroLock, DistroKid covers all bases. Plus, you can promote your releases with Hyperfollow and create eye-catching visuals with the Spotify Canvas generator, all for free. But that's not all. Introducing the DistroKid app, now available on iOS and Android. Artists can manage their releases, view streaming stats, and withdraw earnings, all from the palm of their hand. And for those looking to perfect their sound, check out Mixia. With its simple interface and customizable mastering options, artists can make their music sound polished and professional within minutes. And don't forget about Instant Share, DistroKid's newest feature. Share large files securely with collaborators, producers, and more, ensuring your music streams at the highest quality. Ready to take your music to the next level? Download the DistroKid app and explore their suite of tools today. Plus, listeners can enjoy 30% off their first year by visiting distrokid.com/VIP/DeMakes. That's distrokid.com/VIP/DeMakes.
When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Skims or Allbirds, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and great marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling and for shoppers buying simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. It's home of ShopPay, the #1 checkout in the world. You can use it to boost conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going through to checkout. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/income, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/income to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/income.
Make your next move with American Express Business Platinum. Enjoy complimentary access to the American Express Global Lounge Collection. And with a welcome offer of 150,000 points after you spend $20,000 on purchases on the card within your first 3 months of membership, your business can soar to new heights. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-platinum. Amex Business Platinum. Built for business by American Express.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Hi, this is Debbie, your Blinds.com design consultant.
Oh, wow. A real person.
Yep, I am here to help you with everything from selecting the perfect window treatments to...
Well, I've got a complicated project.
Oh, not a problem. I can even schedule a professional measure and install. We can also send you samples, fast and free.
I just might have to do more.
Oh, okay.
So the first room we're looking at is for guests.
Shop Blinds.com now and get up to 40% off with minimum purchase. Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions may apply.
It's tourney time, and with FanDuel's Dog of the Day, you can get a daily profit boost during the College Conference Championships to bet on any underdog. So get ready to celebrate some upsets.
No one saw that coming, except for me, baby.
21 plus and present in select states. Opt-in required. Minimum plus 100 odds required. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable profit boost tokens. Restrictions apply, including token expiration and max wager amount. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
And now, back to the show.
A couple more things in verse 2. That video game sound is really loud and present. I'm not sure you even know what I'm talking about still,
No,
Martin.
I'm just thinking I need to refresh my memory on that. I think it may be a bass slap or a guitar. Chugga-chung.
That comes in after. Yeah, that's the sound. You just made it with your mouth.
And we were pre-video games when we made the record. Yeah.
Pretty much. Right after Fall Apart at the Seams, we get that sound. And on Your Reasons for Living, Your Reasons for Leaving, we get like 4 low piano notes. Doom, 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 doom. It's just those layers. I absolutely love it. And then we get into pre-chorus 2. Different lyrics from pre-chorus 1.
Yeah.
Again, very Temptations, very Motown. The second pre-chorus is going to continue the story and the narrative. It's not going to repeat the same thing. I wouldn't have thought about it that way had you not mentioned that. That's such a great point.
I don't know the answer to that question. If I knew, I would tell you. What's the look? Look for your information. If there's the one thing that still holds true.
Who got the look? I don't know the answer to that question. Where's the look? If I knew, I would tell you. What's the look? Look for your information. Yes, there's one thing, the one thing that still holds true. What's that?
Yeah, I want it to be like, it's almost like the lead singer's getting irritated by all these kind of, the BV guys, the Pips are irritating Gladys Knight. You know, they're kind of popping up. Yeah. Midnight Train to Georgia. They're kind of popping up with too much information. So I just thought I'd go with that. And on that, Dave Palmer, Steve Singleton, and Mark White each do those parts, you know. So they're doing the what's the look, who's the look, you know, that they interject. And I wanted that because I wanted it to develop, so it wasn't like a song. It was more like a stage play, you know what I mean? People like popping up with lines in a stage play, really.
Well, that's exactly what this
but
part
within
feels.
A song. Yeah.
That's exactly what this part feels like. It's different. It's the same actors, but it's a different stage set. Yeah, that's a cool analogy. Well, on the Who's Got the Look, that's panned off left with lots of room on it this time. You can hear a lot of room and it's super loud. On the Where's the Look, that's panned off right. But I wrote it's inquisitively whispered, that one.
Yeah.
It's like it's asking the question, you know, where's yeah. on the What's the Look, the one you just said, that one's centered and it's a few voices here, not too loud in the mix. Again, different lyrics. And it was here, Martin, in my notes that I wrote, this song has so much personality. When you get to this second pre-chorus and the talking back and forth, it really breathes. It's really cool. The video game sound is present here in pre-chorus 2, but it's way more subdued. The strings are pushed back and center in the mix. They're not off to the left. They're now centered here. That's really interesting. Do you recall that coming about?
Yeah. Well, again, it was all positioning, you know, to make whatever. It wasn't like map it out. It was more what works at that point in the song, really. Yeah, even though it's a chorus, even though the repeats, because I don't know, we wanted it to be like a developing story.
I love it. There's also some loud single piano notes panned off right at different places here in pre-chorus 2. On the line, look for your information. We get this really cool, like almost like Oingo Boingo harmony on this one line. It's a strange harmony on that one line.
The other thing we're doing as well is, the beats there, but it was always playing against the timing. Do you know what I mean? What's the look? Pushing the beat. I don't know the answer to that question, slightly behind the beat, to play with the point. So you could move, it had a physicality, you could move to it, it swung, it swings. But at the same time, you're putting inflections in. Do you know what I mean? And that's there with the hi-hat pattern, but also in the way the vocal sits on the track. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I don't know if I went through everything here lyric wise.
So in the chorus, he goes, that's the look. It's very much not ahead of the beat, but it's pushing the beat all the time, which you get. I mean, when you listen to Off the Wall or Thriller, we love the kind of Quincy Jones productions on those records. They play with that all the time, and it means you can put the simplest thing up there and yet play with it. You know what I mean? It still sounds interesting, kind of thing.
I love it. Well, I didn't read all the lyrics for pre-chorus, so I'm going to do that real quick before we move on. It's who's got the look? I don't know the answer to that question. Where's the look? If I knew, I would tell you. What's the look? Look for more information. Yes, there's one thing, the one thing that still holds true. What's that? And then we get into chorus 2, pretty much what you get from chorus 1 instrument wise, but the guitar panned off left is noticeably louder, as are the horns panned off right. The synths are slightly louder as well, and then you get these really loud horn stabs at the end here of chorus 2 that are super loud. Love, the vocal is doubled again here to accent that one word. And then we get into a 16-bar musical interlude. Here's the intermission of the play, right? This is where you kind of, it's the breather. It's the breather.
Ready for the big finish.
Much like the intro, I had to count the sequencer metronome. Tick, 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 tick. I had to count that to figure out how many bars it was because the band is off. I was trying to figure out if you guys were in a different time signature for these parts.
Should be the same, I think.
It is.
But what we did do, a car arrives and out gets some string players and they've got pizzicatos. They arrive at this point in time, I think.
Okay.
We step up a little bit because down, down. Yes, it's the same chords, but with the blum, 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 the pizzicatos. Yeah.
Fair enough. Well, the first 4 bars, the drums are broken down, bars 5 through 16. The drum beat comes in along with synth bass and variations of those tubular bells panned off left. Another synth is also pushed back center, and we get bongo drums panned off to the right, another signature Trevor Horn producer sound.
Louis Jardim, percussionist, yeah.
Oh, that's who played those. Very cool. Those are panned
in sometimes.
Those are panned off right. We get a single high piano, single chord hit on bar 5, panned off right. Then a tom buildup with the whoa, 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 oh, along with a string crescendo panned off left that's super loud that carries over into chorus 3. And they're still raging here when those synths strings come in here, or I guess real strings, you're saying.
Yeah, there are real strings in there, yeah.
When they come in for chorus 3, it is big. Chorus 3 is pretty much the same as the other two choruses. However, on the second time you say the look of love, we get a new melody. And at the very end, the look of love, we get a backing vocal call and response of look of love that's panned slight left. It's a couple voices in unison. And then we get in to the bridge part. And again, the dynamics here, what's happening is just perfect.
Yeah, part of this comes from the fact that we've hit the third chorus. The ideal thing would be just to repeat the chorus and fade. But we were very ambitious. We wanted to kind of hit you with another chorus slyly, we wanted to creep up on you and provide another chorus. Also, the other thing that's going on there is in the middle eight, the simplest thing to do would be to have a guitar solo or a sax solo,
Sure.
But we had a very strict policy that we were having no guitar solos on our records. The 70s was finished. We were the 80s. We were looking to the future. Our music was different. And I'll tell you a story very briefly. We finished the third chorus here, and then there's a section that was blank for a long time. And I think at that point it goes into, if you judge a book by its cover, then you judge the look by the lover. I hope you'll soon recover. Me, I go from one extreme to another. There's an 8-bar, is it? I think. Anyway, there's a section there. And then after that, there's a section where I make a small speech.
Oh, yes.
Because we didn't edit the track. So we realized we had more breakdowns than we needed. And we were working, we worked in Sami Studios for most of this record. We did the strings in about 2 hours at Abbey Road Studios in London. But on a couple of days, we went to Tony Visconti's studio in Soho. Good Earth Studios. We were doing some keyboard overdubs on The Look of Love. I'll tell you this story very briefly. Good Earth Studios in the center of Soho. Tony Visconti's produced Mark Bolan and David Bowie, as we all know. This is 1982. I go into the toilets there, and then I can hear a voice behind me going, "Look at you, pissing with the big dogs." And I look round, and David Bowie's sitting there with his cup of tea, standing there with his cup of tea.
No way.
And he's come to visit his producer friend, Tony Visconti. So Bowie sat in on the tracks. And you have to imagine, for us, it was mind-boggling, mind-blowing, because I love Bowie. I was just making our first record, and there is Ziggy Stardust sprinkling a bit of his magic dust onto our track. So he came back in the console room, and he's having a joke, and we're just having a laugh with him. And he stuck around, and he suggested, the reason I tell you this is because he suggested in that space, we should have an answering machines had just come in. This is how long ago. And he said, you should keep putting messages down to somebody that's never going to reply. Oh, hi, it's Martin here. Are you there yet? You know what I mean? Are you home? I just wanted to say the look of love or something. And we never ever used the idea. So when it came to close to mixing the record, there was this dead space, this 8-bar section. Now we either put a guitar solo in or...
Which you're not going to do.
That's why I went to the mic and I say, Martin, maybe one day you'll find true love, and start speaking like a Shakespearean actor doing a soliloquy. But basically, it's like an internal sort of monologue. I'm singing away. It's just chatting away. And that's why that 8-bar's there. After that, we start the climb to the end of the record at 3:36 with choruses. So that's where the speechy bit was the last thing I think we recorded on the track. Yeah, because we had to fill a space. That's what I'm saying.
This all makes so much sense now, because that's
you wouldn't really write the arrangement like that on an acoustic guitar or just on a synth.
No, like I was going to say,
it doesn't make sense.
This all makes sense now, that section, because how this last outro / chorus 4 comes in. It feels weird, and I couldn't figure out why, and now I know. Let's go back to what I was calling the bridge.
If you judge a book by the cover, then you judge the look by the lover. I hope you'll soon recover. Me, I go from one extreme to another. Under my friends, just my eyes.
You already recited the lyrics. I don't need to. It's the if you judge a book by the cover.
Yeah, it's a breakdown basically on the kick.
We get broken down drums here with the kick, like you said, and those tubular bells. After the word lover, the second line, panned off left, we get these ah. I guess that's you and not a female vocal, right?
I know there is a female vocalist there.
Okay, I was gonna say you really fooled me.
Yeah, like an operatic vocal at that point in time. Yeah.
How did that come about?
We had some. We were doing some other vocals on Date Stamp, and I'm trying to think of the other tracks, Forever Together. So we just quickly dropped that on from that session, female vocalist. Tessa Niles, as she was known then, Tessa Webb, that was the singer, I believe. So we would have felt the need to add that at that point. But funnily enough, there aren't 3 female vocalists singing the Look of Love, Look of Love. We didn't have the budget. So it's just mainly me. And right at the end, Trevor sings a little bit. I think we'll get there shortly. Yeah, he sang a little bit on it.
All right, well, halfway through, On the Line, I Hope You'll Soon Recover, we get some twinkling of the ivory, some sporadic piano flourishes, and the last line, we get super loud strings that slightly mimic those ah vocals that we just heard, those female vocals. When we get into the spoken word part, here's the thing that I absolutely never realized, and my appreciation for the songwriting here, okay? We've already had 3 choruses.
Yeah.
You're going to get a variation of the chorus coming up, but you're already getting a variation of the chorus here. You just don't know it on the spoken word part. The reason being it's the chorus progression, but this section has the bells panned off left and the horns panned off right that are playing the chorus vocal melody, okay? And the strings run throughout. Halfway through, we hear 5 loud piano notes, but you're hearing the instrumentation doing the chorus melody from earlier while you're saying this, the spoken word part.
And my friends just might ask me, they say, Martin, maybe one day you'll find true love. I say maybe there must be a solution to the one thing we can find.
And all my friends just might ask me, they say, Martin, maybe one day you'll find true love. And I say, maybe there must be a solution to the one thing we can't find. Talking about yourself in first person, this is fantastic. And this, you're saying this came from the mind of David Bowie.
Well, he wanted to do the answering machine thing because there was a big space there. We didn't do the answering machine thing. So I had to come up with something pretty quick, really. And otherwise, we were going to have a sax solo or, we didn't want that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like an internal monologue. Like I say, it's just like whimsical, just daydreaming kind of thing. But the name checking yourself thing, I always loved James Brown when he did it. But Iggy Pop did it on Turn Blue on the Lust for Life album where he goes, Jesus. He does this little prayer halfway through the song. He goes, Jesus, this is Iggy. And I've always been very impressed by that. Yeah. So I think I nicked it from there,
Oh, I'm so far away from her. Jesus, this is Iggy. Yeah.
So in the end, and Bowie produced that record. So in a way, that's his magics. That's Ziggy Stardust's Magic Stardust on the record. Yeah. That's where I came from. Yeah. So name checking yourself is pretty cheeky. Yeah. It's pretty cheeky. Very few people can get away with that.
In this spoken word part, though, subconsciously the listener is hearing the chorus again. You just don't know it.
Yeah. There's 2 things. The chorus
it's brilliant.
It's holding off the chorus. It's almost like making the moment the chorus comes back in more magical, just holding back. But also there's parts of the song where I'm singing out, like when your world is full of strange, but there's also parts where I'm whispering, it's a different, it draws the audience, draws the listener in, I suppose. Yeah. It's very intimate. Yeah.
Well, whispering suspenseful. I had wrote earlier when they said, where's the look, that backing vocal was kind of inquisitive, but this chorus 4 is also pretty much a tag because it's in the realm of the chorus, but it's so different. We get new lyrics and melodies here.
Heaven
That's the look. That's the look. Sisters and brothers. That's the look. That's the look. Should help each other. That's the look. That's the look. Heavens above. That's the look. That's the look. Hip, hip, hooray, aye. That's the look. That's the look. Yippee-yi, yippee-yi, yay. That's the look. That's the look. Be lucky in love. Look of love.
Downbeat and roll credits.
Downbeat and roll credits. Curtain closed. Exactly. Couple things here. On the first, that's the look, that's the look. We get this insanely long drum fill in there. It's just kind of really just bombastic. After that line, we get some oohs on the vocals. On the second and third, that's the looks on the second time. So it says that's the look. On the second, that's the look. We get harmonies on the second and third time. That's not there anywhere else in the song. The horns panned off right are super busy here on the outro chorus. They
Yeah. We let them loose on the final furlong. Yeah, as we get close to the finishing line. Yeah.
On the Be Lucky in Love line, several voices in unison and a killer harmony on that line. And
Trevor Horn's harmony on that one. Yeah, that's Trevor's John Anderson-esque harmony.
John Anderson harmony. There you go. And then, as you said, we stop with a big Tom hit. Done. End of story. Curtain closed. And the play comes to a dramatic end. What was it like getting the mixes back, and was this song a standout initially? Did you guys know you had a hit on your hands, or was this just the fourth track on the record, whatever it was?
No, it felt magical. Tony Visconti, David Bowie sort of part of the session was special. Can't underplay that enough. It's like meeting your hero. Well, it was meeting my hero briefly, but we were very confident when we got to this because Poison Hour had been a hit. So yeah, we're on a roll. But no, we didn't realize that the record would last through decades. We then did a lot of 12-inch mixes, taking the parts from the 24-track reel, and we made Look of Love Part 1, 2, 3, and 4. So when you bought the 12-inch, you had a full orchestral kind of instrumental version, then a minimal mix. So we did a lot of mixing on this track. Yeah, partly down for the love of it because it sounded great coming out of the speakers. Do you know what I mean? It was just a joy. The sessions were a joy. Pretty much, yeah.
I've always credited the new wave and the dance bands. I mean, what you guys were doing 40, 45 years ago, that's what we do now. When you release an album, you release the lyric video, and you release the instrumental version, and you release the dance mix.
Acapella versions and things.
Right.
We were testing the medium, trying to push it. But also, we wanted to make a very sophisticated sounding record that was coming out of England that would be popular everywhere, internationally, not just for your local neighborhood. And also we wanted to make people dance, but think as well. So it was kind of trying to pull in all those elements. So it was a very ambitious record, that plus the Lexicon of Love and all the other tracks.
I love it. You guys released 10 more records since the Lexicon of Love album. You're currently on tour, as we talked about at the top with Howard Jones, and you're also performing the Lexicon of Love album in its entirety on tour this October and November 2025 in the UK. That should be fun.
Yeah, a lot of fun. So I shall be singing the Look of Love for many years to come. Yeah, it's my signature tune.
It's
signature ABC tune.
You took time out of your day off to talk to me. It means the absolute world. And I'm going to leave you one last question. Did you think for the life of you when you were recording this song that you'd be talking to some guy about the song in this kind of depth 43 years later?
Absolutely not. But it's been a pleasure. Yeah, but I'm glad that's been the case. Yeah, it's good.
It's so good for you. Be safe out on the road, and thank you so much.
Thanks, Chris.
Shoot that poison arrow through my heart. Shoot that poison arrow. Shoot that poison arrow through my heart. Shoot that poison arrow.
Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed that amazing conversation with Martin Fry. Chris and I got a lot to talk about in the rap segment that's coming up, and we also have the band you might not know coming right up after a few words from our sponsors.
Welcome to us talking about our podcast for a minute.
What's the name of that podcast?
That's Axe to Grind, and right now you're going to be getting a little taste of it, right down to the shaky microphone and all.
And my name's Bob.
And my name's Patrick, and usually we're joined by Tom.
Tom's the best. Tom has a real grown-up job that requires him to be at work, but we talk about decidedly not so grown-up things like
hardcore music and things that people that like hardcore music tend to like.
So that could be the latest shows, revisiting classic material, talking about the new classics, all the little dorm room nonsense that you imagine from niche music podcasts that you either love, want to love, or hate.
Yeah, imagine all the emotions that you have towards a genre that has impacted your life, and then condense them down to an hour to 2 hours a week.
So triangulate your speakers, think about jumping off the bed, singing along, dancing like an idiot, and listen to Axe to Grind podcast.
Hey, this is Dewey Halpus, host of Peer Pleasure on the Sound Talent Media Podcast Network. Join me each week as I explore another long-form conversation with one of your favorite musicians, actors, comedians, or creatives. From Chino Moreno of the Deftones, John Gorley of Portugal the Man, to Fat Mike from NoFX and Ian MacKaye from Fugazi and Minor Threat, we go all over the map. From Fall Out Boy to Slayer, Peer Pleasure has it all. Check us out now on Sound Talent Media.
The Helping Friendly podcast explores the music and fan experience of Phish through interviews and deep dives on shows and tours. For more than 10 years, we've created insightful and fun discussions about our favorite band, and with the help of our guests and thematic series, we're still discovering new angles of appreciation for Phish. And when the band is on tour, we provide a review of every show the following day. As one of our listeners said, any Phish fans that enjoy meandering conversations and incredible insight on new and old Phish shows, this is for you. Highly recommend. It's not just about the band and the shows, it's about the journey getting there. Throughout 2024, we're going to be running down the top 25 Phish tours of all time, and that'll be interspersed with show reviews and regular episodes. Join us and check out the Helping Friendly podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello out there. Hi, I'm Hal Schwartz.
And I'm Flynn McLean. We want to tell you about our podcast, None But the Brave, which is dedicated to taking a deep dive into the work of Bruce Springsteen.
We're currently in our 5th season. Our latest episodes focus heavily on Bruce's 2024 tour and have featured such guests as Anthony Castrovince from MLB Network and Barstool's Kirk Minahan.
We're also covering the 40th anniversary of Bruce's biggest record, Born in the USA. And as part of that, coming up this week, Uprock's cultural critic Stephen Hyden returns to the show for a fascinating hour-long conversation about his new book, There Was Nothing You Could Do, Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA and the End of the Heartland.
To listen, you can go to our website, mbtbpodcast.com, or subscribe on your preferred podcasting platform.
We hope to see you further on up the road.
Thank you so much. We'll be seeing you.
Hey, this is Steve Choi, host of the Musicians Guild podcast, part of the Sound Talent Media Podcast Network. Within the four walls of the Musicians Guild, we'll be discussing the habits, idiosyncrasies, experiences, and general psychology of my friends and peers, all involved with music in various capacities. Listen and subscribe at soundtalentmedia.com.
Hey everyone, this is Tuck from Fit for a King, an off-road minivan. Every week I bring you fun interviews alongside your favorite metalcore entertainers with my new podcast, Get Tucked. Join me every Monday with bands like Counterparts, Crystal Lake, like Moths to Flames, and many more. We play unsigned and undiscovered bands, deep dive into each artist's history, and of course provide the greatest breakdowns in current metalcore. Tune in to Get Tucked every Monday, out now through Sound Talent Media.
As we near the end of the show, here's a band you might not know.
Welcome to this week's Band You Might Not Know. If you'd like your band to be considered for Chris DeMakes a podcast, email your best song via MP3 only and a short bio to bandyoumightnotknow@gmail.com. This week's featured artist is Broken Idols, a ska punk band from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada, featuring Cody Martinka on guitar and lead vocals, Aria Varelli on drums, and Hot Tony on bass and backing vocals. You can find their music on Bandcamp and all streaming services. Here's a snippet of their song, Ernie's Pants.
We don't know. Running in Ontario, how far will we go? For Ernie's Pants,
The Wrap with Chris and Chris.
So, Chris, most people are just hearing the audio version of this podcast, unless they're a member of our Patreon and can see the video version. But I got to tell you, right now, Martin and ABC are on tour with Howard Jones. And between Martin and Howard Jones, I want to drink and eat what these guys drink and eat because they look incredible. Don't you think they look incredible? I want to look like these guys when I'm in my 60s for sure.
Yeah, they've I don't think they did Rock and Roll 101 handbook of drinking and not getting any sleep every night. They did something, Chris. They shook hands with the devil. Now, Martin looks great, and I try so hard not to fanboy out and super fan. This song is part of my childhood. I told him I was a 9-year-old kid hearing this on the radio. I told my cousin, who was my cousin was kind of responsible for getting me into New Wave. He was a huge New Wave fan back in the 80s, my cousin Tom. And I texted him this morning. I said, never believe who I'm talking to. But there was a mystique back then, Chris. I kind of touched on it. I've talked to you about this before, where I never thought I'd get to go to England. I certainly never thought I'd be able to talk to Martin Fry from ABC about a song that I loved. It's just full circle moments every day here on Chris DeMakes a Podcast.
You brought out a good point right away in this conversation, Chris, when he talked about how the music video for The Look of Love looks like something that would come out today.
It's unreal.
It doesn't look like it's from 43 years ago or whatever. It still looks great, and that just goes to show you how ahead of their time, not only on the audio side of things, not only on the recording technology, but also from the visual aspect, they were ahead of their time. And I think that's so cool.
No, they were they were pulling from so many different, let's just think here. 1982, that's a short 14, 15 years from when the Beatles stopped, performing. Okay. Mm-hmm. British Invasion. They had all the music in the 70s and all those great English bands he was talking about, the hotbed of Sheffield. You look over and see Def Leppard. You look over here and see this band. That's exciting to be in that bubble, and just to be part of that had to be electric.
Well, they were part of what was referred to at the time as the second British invasion. That whole new wave movement was part of that. Chris, you guys talked about Trevor Horn a good bit. We have talked about Trevor Horn a lot on One Hit Thunder because he's just been a beast of a producer. And, in the 90s, he brought it up momentarily, but he produced Seal's Kiss from a Rose.
Yep.
Tattoo, Leanne Rimes. He produced Belle and Sebastian's biggest album, Dear Catastrophe Waitress. He's just like a beast of a musician and a producer. I liked hearing about some of the stuff that he was doing, a producer who was ahead of his time. I also like that Martin talked about in the intro of this song, they were trying to create and milk the drama of the whole thing. I thought that was an interesting way to put it, is to compare it to like some sort of play or movie or something.
Yeah, and you get that feeling of it, and that spoken word part. I kind of even said it's pompous, it's kind of egotistical, it's you're talking about yourself, but it's so perfect. And I know what he feels like with David Bowie. I've had interactions with some heroes of mine that have just been mind-blowing. It's like, why am I sitting here talking to this person right now? And that also, I think he kind of said it in not so many words, that added to the mojo of the recording session and added to this song, right?
Sure. Once he said that, you can feel the mystique of it or something. And, it probably took those guys. David Bowie's one of those people that's like a whole other level, like that's like meeting Michael Jackson, or that's like, that's a whole other thing, Mick Jagger or something. And I could imagine that it just got everybody to this whole other level during the experience. I think it's so cool that ABC was open to such a fun palette of sounds. Like Martin said it. He said they wanted to extend beyond the basic guitar, bass, drums, vocals. You had marimba sounds. You had the Rhodes. You had all kind of stuff. And also, think about it. 1982, they don't have the luxury. You and I have the luxury of opening up a Logic session or a Pro Tools session and having access to every sound ever. They had to create these sounds. They had to have access to them in some way.
No, it's incredible the groundwork that they laid. It can't be stated enough how hard it was. It was in real time. You couldn't digitally transfer something. It was like, here's the 60-minute cassette, and you're going to put another cassette over here and press play to record at 60 minutes. It's in real time. Yeah, high-speed dubbing came later, but this was all analog real time. It took a lot of work. They melded digital sounds and analog sounds, and these productions, you heard these sounds in this production well into the 90s and beyond. You still hear it today. It was and is so cutting edge. And going back, you said they had to sample all this stuff and make all this stuff. It's truly incredible.
Right. They didn't just have some bank they could go into. They had to actually create the sound and then sample it.
No, and there's one more thing I want to touch on. And we straddle the line here at the podcast, Chris, about getting too technical. Okay, I don't want to be hearing people tuning out left and right if you get into some of this stuff. But Martin had kind of referenced at one point where you take things in blocks. You only had so many tracks, so he used the word commit. It's like, okay, our bass, a synth track, our keyboards, and our backing vocals are here. How that's mixed, that's it. You have to mix that how it's going to sound to add it to the next part and build on top of it. Of course, George Martin was a pioneer of that at Abbey Road with the Beatles, but this was cutting edge technology done with elbow grease, duct tape, and a razor blade. This was tough work.
Yeah. And Chris, probably my favorite story in this whole conversation was the story about the goodbye, which then, as he said, became one of the signature hooks of the song, is that it was performed by the receptionist at the studio, just saying that goodbye. And I think you described it as almost like obnoxiously loud.
Yes.
Which is funny that the receptionist at the studio is immortalized not only in the song, but maybe as one of the most memorable things about the song, one of the moments in the song when they play it live that, like he said, 10,000 people are saying that goodbye. I just thought that was so cool. Like, who is this random receptionist that is such a part of rock and roll history in this way?
Yeah, it's so cool. I can't say it enough. I was starstruck is the wrong word, but I just went back to being a kid, hearing this song on the radio and getting to talk to Martin was such a thrill. I'll tell you another thrill. Head over to DeMakes.com. That's our Patreon, where you can get bonus episodes of the After Party and all kinds of other good little goodies and different tiers over there. DeMakes.com. Help out the podcast you know and love. And Chris, I understand you got a wonderful Apple Podcast review for us ready to go.
Yeah. Hey, yeah. Like Chris said, go check out our Patreon at DeMakes.com. But also, this doesn't cost you a dang thing to go on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and leave us a little review, which I got one for you today here, Chris. This one, the title of this one is Like an Old Friend, gave us 5 stars. It is from Iron Chef Fireland, who said, after saying like an old friend, in fact, it is. Met Chris DeMakes close to 30 years ago while running a radio station at Eckerd College. We interviewed Less Than Jake in the van, had a blast, booked them a few times for shows, and now it's memory lane with a bunch of episodes. For the 80s playlist show, I was hoping for one song for the hard list. While about to go to a sound check at Janet's Landing, Chris left the Pelican Pub, dive bar behind the stage, dropped $20 in the jukebox, and put Livewire by Motley Crue on repeat until they couldn't take it anymore. Thought that would be a lock for the summer of '82. Keep up the great show, guys. I really enjoy it.
That was Iron Chef something. What was his name?
Iron Chef Fireland.
Iron Chef Fireland. Well, thank you so much. And the night in question at the Pelican Pub, that was not me. That was my friend Sean Samperi. He put that in, but I was there. I was hanging out with some knuckleheads that I knew from back home. Sean did that, so I'm not gonna take credit for it. But thanks for the kind words. And man, Chris, those shows at Eckerd College, people naked. You couldn't get naked at a college now. It was wild shows. I do remember, believe it or not, the interview with that fella in the van. Thanks for the review. This was an awesome episode. I want to thank Martin Fry from ABC for sitting in with us, and we'll catch you next week.
One Hit Thunder is a podcast where we both celebrate and have a good laugh about bands and artists that had just one hit that we all know. Each week, we're joined by a guest from the world of music or comedy to learn more than you ever thought you would about some songs that you can't forget. And we decide if they brought the One Hit Thunder or were nothing more than a one-hit blunder. Look, if you listen to the show, you're probably going to laugh, and I guarantee you're going to crush next time the bar has music trivia. Tag Team, Jane Child, Meredith Brooks, Looking Glass, Sean Mullins, Eiffel 65, EMF, Crash Test Dummies, Crazy Town, Chumbawamba. We have hundreds of episodes in our back catalog and a new episode each week, so pass the Dutchie, make sure you're connected, and subscribe to One Hit Thunder wherever you get your pods.
What's up, everybody? I am Finn McKenty, host of the Punk Rock NBA podcast, part of the Sound Talent Media Podcast Network. My podcast is all about doing what you love for a living, and every week I sit down and talk to people who have done exactly that. For example, musicians like Tommy from Between the Buried and Me, Matt from Periphery, Lil Lotus and Shinigami, among many others, photographers, artists, designers, YouTubers like Glenn Fricker and Sarah Dici, and I unpack exactly how they got to where they are today with the goal of helping you do the same. So if that sounds cool, you can listen and subscribe at soundtalentmedia.com, and I'll see you there.
Ahoy there!
My chute! It won't open!
Don't worry, I'm here to save you.
Thank you!
Up to 89% on the cost of your shipping with pirateship.com.
What?
Shall I take that packet?
Wait, where are you going?
To save you up to 89%. Pirateship.com will save you money on shipping. Savings vary depending on weight, dimension, season, and destination of the package.